Hello and welcome back, it is Mark again, and I am here today to talk about the AM2 and the process that's involved with completing that, with all of the help and guidance that's available from NET or NET and the resources on their website. We're going to dive in and have a look at that. We're going to look through the pre-assessment checklist. I have done some audio podcasts on this from a year or more ago, so you can go and check those out as well. They're on the Apprentice 1-to-1 podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I do regularly drop content out that I hope helps apprentices, from demonstrations of testing out in the workplace and doing things like this. But without further ado, let's shrink me down on the screen size and get on with actually talking about the issue at hand. So if I drop me away to this top corner for the time being, you should see straight away that we have got the AM2 page open, and that's the Net Services website. So that's netservices.org.uk/AM2. Now if I go off and open up that page so I can start interacting with it myself, I want to first draw attention to this page. And this is talking about the AM2, and it says the AM2 should be taken by electrotechnical apprentices who are training against the apprenticeship framework and those undertaking the JIB Mature Candidate Assessment, and those following the Level 3 NVQ who are not apprentices. So I'm not going to read through all of that there, because you can go off and do that yourself, but it does tell you here that the best way to prepare for the AM2 is to use the resources available on the NET website. Now, there are videos across YouTube from people who give instruction and help on how to do your AM2, but it's really important that we remember that this is an endpoint assessment. This is something that needs to verify your competence and abilities as electricians. And the last thing you want to do is to get through this when you're not ready for it, or you don't understand all of the underlying principles behind that endpoint assessment. Because when you go out into the workplace, there's going to be nobody there giving you a video tutorial of how to do the job. You need to know. Now, of course, you do need to prepare for what to expect whilst undertaking the AM2. Of course you do. And practice plays an important part in that. But you really do make sure you are actually ready for that assessment. And the content that I produce is more aimed at showing you how I approach and do things, rather than giving you a step-by-step process to completing your AM2. That's something that I think actually devalues the whole point of training to be electricians. So you won't ever find that on my channel, but I want to show you the resources that are here on the NET website, because there is loads of them. There is a lot of work you can go off and do yourself to prepare in the best possible way you can to give yourself the best chance of passing first time. And it is a course that is difficult to complete. I think the pass mark kind of hovers around 30-40%. If you draw back to the podcast I did with Darren from NET themselves, he spoke about that on that recording, and I'll drop a link in the description to this video so you can go off and watch that if you wish. But talking about the preparation, so the best way to prepare for AM2 is to use the resources available on the NET website. Download the Readiness for Assessment checklist, and we're going to have a look through that on this video as well. You need to ensure that you're confident in each area before you take the assessment. We'll speak about that later on. And then it says to download the pre-assessment manual. And again, I've already downloaded that, so we'll have a little look at that as well. And they're saying to watch our top tips videos for hints and advice on each section during the assessment. Now, if you want, you can scroll down the rest of this page, and it's broken the AM2 section detail down into the A1, A2, B, C, D, and E. And you can open those up, and it'll tell you a little overview of what needs to be done during that process. And again, you can expand that further. I'm not going to run through all of that right now. We'll skip past that for the time being, but we'll maybe come back to that a little bit later on in the video. But if you want to go off and look on the website yourself, it actually breaks it down stage by stage of how long you get on each module and what kind of thing you need to expect whilst you're doing that. But for the minute, I want to play you this video. So this is a really short, sub 2-minute video from NET themselves. So if I hit that up, and I will be quiet for a moment while you all watch this.
At the end of your electrical apprenticeship, you'll need to take the AM2 or AM2S test before you can become fully qualified. What's this? Think of it as similar to a driving test. You spend weeks or months learning how to drive, then the driving test is where you put everything into practice and you're marked against strict criteria. The AM2 and AM2S are just like this. It's an in-depth assessment where you have to carry out specific tasks to show what you've learned during your apprenticeship. The whole test is around 16 hours long, split over 2.5 days, and it's broken down into different sections, such as installation, fault finding, safe isolation, and inspection and testing. Strict exam conditions are in place during the assessment, so this means no electronic devices or getting help from anyone else. You'll be monitored by an assessor who will be marking your work as the day progresses. Once you pass the assessment, it's one of the final pieces of the puzzle to completing your apprenticeship and becoming a fully qualified electrician. Your training provider will tell you which assessment you'll be taking, the AM2 or the AM2S. This simply depends on which type of apprenticeship or training program you're following. It's really important that you don't take the test until you're 100% ready. You can use our self-assessment checklist to work through everything you need to do. Use it during the last few months of your apprenticeship. Talk to your employer and training provider and make sure you're comfortable with all areas of the test so you're fully prepared before booking. The NET website gives you much more information on the AM2 and AM2S and each section in detail, the checklists, how to best prepare and what happens during the assessment. Visit netservices.org.uk to find out more.
So we'll pause that there, and hopefully that gave a good overview of what the AM2 or AM2S is and the process that's behind, actually stepping forward to take that. And again, we're going to draw back to this page towards the end of the podcast, but I want to, calling it a podcast, the video. I want to come onto the actual videos section of the NET website. So it does reference right on that first page the 3 things that they recommend you look at. And one of them is the video help that they have. And if you look through here, they've got top tips for safe isolation, for the installation, for your inspection and testing and certification, assessments of applied knowledge, fault finding, what is an AM2E assessment. There's a lot of the common questions to be answered on this page. Again, they've got the inspection and testing prep app, and we're going to talk about that later because that is another brilliant development from NET. And also the Amped Up game. So there's a few things that you can get yourselves involved with that'll help your learning, and it's supported material from NET that's going to give you bits of guidance to help you complete the AM2 without spoon feeding you a step-by-step how-to. That's really important, I think, that we actually gatekeep quite well of what's involved with an AM2 to not give a step-by-step process of how to complete it, but also to make people aware of what's going to be required. So that's where these videos come into their own. And one I do want to play you is the safe isolation one. So I'm going to start that one off now, and you can have a little watch of this one as well, because it's another really good little video.
Remember to fit the warning notices. Use the safe isolation kit correctly and make sure you know how to use it. You'll see the kits before you start the assessment and will have time to familiarise yourself. Make sure you keep the key with you at all times when not in use. If the key is not kept in a secure place, you will fail. Be sure you prove the test equipment before and after safe isolation. If you don't, it could have serious safety implications. Make sure you demonstrate the correct procedure for safe isolation of supplies. If you don't test all combinations via the 10-point test, you will fail.
So you can see that's a really short 1-minute video, but it's giving you a key message there about the safe isolation procedure. We've spoken about it on the podcast before with the guys who've come on and chatted about it. It was Ricky Howell, who has gone over this point a few times of making sure you keep the key safe. I've misleadingly said that's how he failed his AM2 first time at going through that process, but it isn't. He failed for a different reason, which was equally silly. I think it was to do with the process of measuring PFC on the test instrument he was using. So you do have to make sure you follow the processes that NET expect. And again, we've spoken about safe isolation when we're looking at all live conductors, which would include the neutral. Out in industry, that's what we would want to see. But obviously on your AM2 assessment, They're happy for an MCB, which is just giving you isolation of the line to be sufficient. So you need to do what they're actually asking for in the AM2. So sometimes when you're looking at videos on YouTube and the processes that people might be using for safe isolation, that's not going to apply in your AM2. So you need to be really careful that you're preparing in the right way. So speak to your lecturers, speak to your employers if you're not sure, and get that expert advice close up and personal rather than via YouTube. I do want to look at the top tips for installation as well. So I'll play this one. It's another really short video, and this will be the last one. It's just to give you a feel of the videos that are available on the net website, that they're not kind of bombarding you with videos like this one that might be going on for half an hour or an hour. It's really short and insightful and punchy.
The most important thing to remember is follow the specification. This is crucial as it tells you what MCB protective devices, cable sizes, and so on to use. If you stray from the specification, it will almost certainly set you up to fail in other areas. Make sure you install the circuits in line with the BS 7671 wiring regulations. If you don't do this, the installation can't be certified. Secure the conductors in the terminals. If a conductor can be pulled out of a connection between a finger and thumb, it will be classed as loose and you will lose marks. Watch your insulation. If you remove too much, contact could be made with live conductors. If you remove too little, it may not make an effective electrical connection.
So again, another really short and punchy video. I really like them, because it's giving you the key things to keep in mind. These will be the common reasons that people don't pass their AM2. So they're talking about your terminations, pulling them out, not stripping the right length of insulation. This will all be feedback that net have due to the reasons people fail their AM2. So pay attention to these videos. I think you should take the time off from looking around Instagram and TikTok. It's something that we all do. I often go off and do it, and pay attention to some of these important things as well when you're preparing for your AM2. It's only going to take you 10-15 minutes to watch through these videos. And then again, I want to speak about the app, and I'm going to look at this one here. So this is the Net app to do with testing and inspection. It's been developed alongside Sparky Ninja, and it's actually won a few awards. It won the Professional Electrician and Installer 2021 Top Product Award, and it also won an award with the Electrical Times, I think. Let's go back and have a look on the news thing, because I think it was in there. I don't want to misquote them. So yeah, it's been the crowned winner of the 2021 Electrical Times Awards as well. So you can see that in there. But we'll jump back to find out more about the app. And if you watch this little video, it'll give you an overview of it. And there's links there to go and download it from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. But we'll just have a quick run through the app. And again, just to give you a feel of this, it's been heavily promoted throughout social media by Sparky Ninja and others, such as myself. So hopefully you're aware of it already. But if you're not, this is somewhere you can go and practice your testing through an app without having to use any instruments, because there is the issue there of apprentices using electrical test instruments when they're not qualified and they're away from supervision, but you want to have a bit of understanding of what you need to be doing. Being able to do it on an app is very helpful, I think. So I'll play this one as well. So that's another short and punchy video that they've put forward there, and that just gives you an overview of what the app can do. I think it's it's a key repeating theme that NetArt trying to draw these videos out into long monologues. They're just putting stuff forward in a short, punchy way to really get people's attention to the key points. And yeah, that app's well worth going off and having a look at. If we can zoom back in again onto these videos, if you look at the Amped Up game, so this is another one where you can go off and play a game that Net have put together. So I'll drop this video on as well because this is another good one. So again, another very quick overview of what that app is. It's very much for beginners coming into the electrical industry, so you can go and see what's involved and how current works and voltage and the kind of electrical circuits that you might encounter. So if you're just starting out in your apprenticeship, it's well worth going to look at that to bring awareness of what the Net website has on it, and also a bit of an introduction to the electrical industry as well. Now if I move on to the next page I've got open here on the Net website, and this is the assessment process itself. So it tells you here what to kind of expect. So this all comes as 5 little subsections. Whoops, if I can highlight it all correctly. So preparing for your assessment, common sense can desert the best of us in exam situations. So in the run-up to the assessment, it might be helpful to consider the following. And these might all sound really basic, but it is really good advice. So good night's sleep. Don't be making big plans to get down the pub and watch the football or go out to the cinema or whatever till late. Make sure you get plenty of rest and prepare in the right way. Make sure you know where the test centre is and how to get there, and your travel time's all organised. And your mobile phones, smartwatches, MP3 players and electronic devices are not allowed in the assessment area, so it's to be aware of that. If you want to take them with you, they get handed in and usually locked up in a little locker for safe storage through the day. Then it tells you what happens on the day itself. So when you arrive at the assessment centre, you'll be welcomed by your assessor. Before you start your test, you go through an induction process. You're asked to complete some paperwork. You get a tour of the assessment area. They highlight any health and safety procedures, such as fire escapes and things. You'll be given the assessment manual, which shows you what you need to do and all the diagrams you're going to need. And to carry out your installation, you'll be provided with a bay, which is similar to what you would have had at college and hopefully have experience of working in already. Once the assessment starts, you're given preparation and reading time for each section. The manual is kept in the bay, so you don't need to memorise anything. It's an important point of note, so you do get to read and prepare for each section. That's not part of the time to actually carry it out, so you do get a bit of an opportunity there. You'll also be given breaks throughout the day, so your assessor will inform you about these during the induction. So you're going to get time to go off and have some lunch, for example, or a stretch of the legs and clear of the head. So important things to remember: no mobile phones. Again, you have to hand them in. You don't need to bring any tools. Remember to bring some photographic ID, so your driving license, passport, ECS card, or even your employer ID. And you should bring your own safety boots and appropriate workwear, so they're not going to provide you with those. After the assessment, your assessor will tell you when to expect the results. It's usually within no more than 5 working days. And if you have passed, Net will issue your Assessment of Occupational Competence Certificate or Endpoint Assessment Certificate, and you can find out more about that on the certification page. If you need a resit, speak to your training provider about how this works and what you'll need. So let's get that as well. And then if you have any special learning requirements, it's just telling you to inform the assessment centre before you attend. So don't be afraid to make those issues known if you do have them, and you can be given help to make sure you have a fair opportunity to complete your AM2 as well. So that's a really short and insightful little bit of information in the help and advice section on the Net website. So we'll close that one down. And we're going to jump into the beefy part of it here. So this is your readiness for assessment. This is the key thing you need to do in preparation for actually stepping up to take your AM2. And there's a few different requirements for this. So if you're a mature candidate, for example, or if you are the full candidate, you know, it is a little bit different. So you can see I've opened up the AM2E there, which is the full checklist, and it's for those who don't already hold the AM2. There's just different points you need to make sure you're capable and competent at doing before you go forward for that test that are different based on the route you're taking. But we're going to focus in on this one here. So this is a full AM2 self-assessment checklist, and it's to be completed by the candidate, so that's you, the employer and the training provider. So you put your candidate name on there, your national insurance number and your unique learner number. It gives you some important information. I'm not going to read through all of that, but it does tell you information to do with what's involved with the AM2, sort of what we've just gone through. And in accordance with the installation specific and relevant statutory and non-statutory regulations, candidates will be expected to install, terminate, connect, inspect, test and commission a 3-phase distribution board and sub-circuit, a 3-phase direct online motor circuit, a single-phase lighting and power circuits, central heating, sustainable energy system, a safety service circuit and device, and some data cabling. So it's telling you there what's actually involved. The assessment covers the following sections. So we spoke about those. I'm going to go back to those again at the end of the video. But essentially, you've got your safe isolation, your composite install, inspection and testing, safe isolation of circuits, fault diagnosis and rectification, and assessment of applied knowledge. It tells you about using this section checklist. You need to complete sections A to E and tick the boxes. So this has just been really honest. There's no point kidding yourself with these answers. And you need to tell your employer the same. Your training provider should be well aware of this already, so they should be answering this honestly. Too many people get put forward for their AM2 before they're ready, just to satisfy time frames for training centres. You know, they get funding based on certain stages through your learning journey, and likewise with your employers, they're going to want you to be qualified as quickly as possible in some cases, so they can put you out to more use than shadowing a mentor, for example. So you all need to approach this honestly. That is the key point I want to emphasize there. There is no point taking this before you're ready. It's pointless exercise for all people concerned, because ultimately you will end up possibly failing this and then having to pay for a resit, and nobody wants to be in that position if they can avoid it. So it's telling you here there's kind of 4 different options you have to choose. So you can say that you, when it says here, for each item, please tick 1 box in the knowledge section and 1 in the experience section. So you've got limited, adequate, extensive, and unsure. So if we just look at the first one on the top of that list there, so this is to do with safe isolation and risk assessments. So can you carry out and document an assessment of risk? So if you want to tick you've had limited exposure to that, or you've had adequate, or you've had extensive, or if you're not sure, that's the knowledge. So if you've been given that knowledge of it, and have you had experience of it? And again, just answer that honestly. Have you carried out a risk assessment alongside a mentor out on site? Have you done it more than once? You know, if you have, you could tick the extensive box. Have you covered it in a college environment? Be given knowledge of what's actually involved with risk assessment, why we do them, when, and you know what's appropriate while you're carrying them out. Have you done it more than once? And again, tick that honestly. And again, you have the same here for inspection and testing. So let's look at continuity of protective conductors. You know, have you got knowledge of that? Hopefully you have, so you can tick extensive on that because you've given yourself ample exposure to it by reading guidance note 3, been taken through it by a lecturer and your employer. You know, have you actually carried out those tests on site? That would be in the experience section of that list. Have you recorded those results on test sheets? Again, make yourself aware of the test sheet. And as Ricky Howell again, he keeps popping up because he's a font of really insightful information actually. He says very often that the test sheets take you through in the right order for your test process, so pay attention to that as well. But have you got experience of that out on site, and can you tick extensive, adequate, limited? So it does take you through every single step, and if you answer these honestly alongside your employer and your training provider, when you get to the end of that list, and you can identify any further knowledge or experience that you might require. So the candidate requires further knowledge in, and you can list those things and then tick them off as you complete them. Same for the experience section. You then have to have a training provider declaration of readiness. So your training provider will read this statement and then sign their lives away to say that they believe you're ready for it, and your employer does the same. And when all of that is complete and all of these ticks have been made to any further knowledge and experience you need, and everybody's happy that you're at a stage to go forward for it, you can then sign and date that form as well. So everybody would be happy at that stage for you to go forward to carry out your AM2. And it is vitally important, again, that you're honest with yourself through that. I'm not going to run through every single option on there. You can go off and look on the website, download the document itself, and have a look at that. The other thing you can look at is the pre-assessment manual for AM2, and this covers all versions. This is another big document, and again, it gives you the introduction of what's actually involved with the AM2. It says here the pre-assessment manual is designed to help candidates preparing to take the AM2. So you'll be able to read details on each section of the assessment, and that's kind of why I didn't cover that at the start of the video, because it is covered in here. Tells you a lot of the things already that we've discussed to do with getting a good night's sleep. An important point of reference is the publications and documents. So this is really key. It's all based on BS 7671, the IET Guidance Note 3 for your inspection and testing. So again, there's other documents out there from some of the scheme and trade bodies, for example. There's videos of how people approach testing in the workplace. How I test might not be how it's laid out in Guidance Note 3. And certainly with safe isolation in mind, that's something that you're going to see different out in the workplace to what is expected when you're on the AM2. So pay attention to what the actual documents that you're working from are. So again, you've got the on-site guide to the building regs, and your candidate manual. So that's the 5 documents. The candidate manual is for your reference throughout the assessment, and it must remain in the assessment area. When required, the following additional documents will be provided. So you'll be given risk assessments, you'll be given an installation certificate, your schedule of inspections and the test results, and some fault symptom information. So they're going to provide you with that. It says brush up on these for your theory. So there is a theory element of the assessment, and you'll need to be up to speed on the 4 different guides. So your building regs, the wiring regs, your on-site guidance, and on-site guide and Guidance Note 3. Make sure you revise these carefully. You don't want to spend 3 days in the assessment test rig getting everything right, only to end up losing points on the theory aspects. So don't forget the basics. You'll have covered a lot of this in your apprenticeship in college already, so you should have a good understanding of it. But it's well worthwhile having to dig through those books and just having a little brush up. Certainly with the on-site guide and Guidance Note 3, they don't take long to read through, so spend a bit of time revising those. It says here to know your paperwork, so make sure you're confident in completing certificates. Just mentioned that earlier, so make sure you do understand how you record test results and the schedule of inspections and how they work, what's applicable and what's not to certain bits of installation work. In your assessment area, the following will be displayed, so it tells you about your health and safety information and fire procedures, risk assessment information, schematic and wiring diagrams for the electrical installation, and functional operation flowcharts. So all the information you need is going to be out there on Onsure. After carry out inspection and testing, the centre assessor will supervise you in functional testing of all final circuits and their connected components. So you should carefully read all the assessment instructions, study the diagrams, and use information throughout the assessment. If you don't understand any of the instructions, the centre assessor can provide further explanation if required. So they're not going to tell you how to do a specific item within the AM2, but if there's something you're not sure on and that doesn't make sense, don't dwell on it quietly. Ask the question. There might be a simple way that they can explain it that you're maybe not reading right in the instructions that have been provided. So don't be afraid of asking for some help if you need it. The assessment sections and sequence. So you've got safe working practices, composite installation, inspection and testing, safe isolation of circuits, fault diagnosis, and then assessment of applied knowledge. It then takes you all through these, so it will tell you here the safe isolation procedure. It's very important it's done correctly. So the 10 steps, and they actually tell you how to do that on this document, so it's going through it. So if you read this and you're not sure of safe isolation, this is what NET want to see on your AM2. So there's that there. There's the risk assessment as well, which takes you through how to do those. It says here some of the common errors. So we safe working practices. It tells you some of the common things that people get wrong. So again, make sure you do the 10-point test for your safe isolation. Make sure you are not testing at the wrong position on the switch. So yeah, I'm not going to read through it all because I want to try and keep this video to a reasonable length. It's probably already too long. And again, it takes you through that on the composite install for your TPN distribution board. It says here that's an 8.5-hour section. You get 15 minutes as well to read this section and prepare for the assessment, so use all of that time. Don't just have a quick glance through and jump straight on with it. Take your time and understand what's been asked of you. You know, it's an opportunity for you to really understand what's needed before jumping in at the deep end. And again, here it's telling you some of the common errors, and they've highlighted this one here, that candidates do not install circuits in accordance with the installation specification. So read the specification, take time to do that. I want to emphasize that again. I'm not going to go through all of these, but if you want to go off and read them, you know, this is a really insightful way that you can prepare for your AM2. It's telling you some of the things a lot of people fall down on. And again, with your inspection and testing, it's telling you to refer to guidance note 3. This is a 3.5-hour section. You're allowed 20 minutes to read this section and prepare, so again, make use of that time. I'm not going to go through all of that, but essentially you have to run through a full test process and then record those results. So the faults and alterations, this is something that people ask a lot of questions on. There is a fault finding section where the assessor will introduce some faults to an installation, and you have to determine what they are and then correct them. So it'll tell you here some of the common errors. Candidates do not prepare the instrument for use and set it onto the correct range, so they're going to be making sure you understand, you know, what you're measuring during that fault diagnosis period. So select the correct function or voltage, remember to null your leads, and check that the meter is in date and safe for use. That's one of the things that we always have to do, check our equipment. And if you use the app that Sparking Injure and Net have developed, it actually references that in there as well. So that's really helpful for preparing for your testing inspection. Go and download it if you haven't already. And again, candidates do not carry out the test in accordance with guidance note 3. You know, this is something that you must do, so you must follow that procedure. It's all in there. Go off and read guidance note 3. And again, I've done some podcasts that actually talk through the process for carrying out your testing, and I'll link those in the description of this video as well. I did them probably 18 months ago now. So yeah, you've got a whole list there as well. You've got your safe isolation of circuits. You've got half an hour at that, 5 minutes to prepare. Again, make use of it. You've got to replace a single phase piece of equipment, a 3-phase piece of equipment, and to isolate the distribution board in your fault diagnosis bay. And again, you need to do your safe isolation procedure. Make sure you do it correctly. Put your key in a safe place. And again, there's a list of common errors there for you to go and have a look at. So the fault diagnosis and rectification, that's 2 hours, and allowed 5 minutes to read through that section again. And that's to demonstrate your competence of identifying faults in a circuit with information provided by the centre assessor, and state and record for the faults. So the type of each fault, if it's short or open circuit, high resistance or a misconnection, the specific location of each fault, between what 2 points or what piece of equipment, how each fault could be rectified, and any additional works required to prove the fault has been rectified. And again, it gives you some common errors on there. And then your assessment of applied knowledge is an hour long, and it's basically a multiple choice section of exam questions that you should be familiar with through your learning experience at the college. So as long as you've revised a little bit for those, they shouldn't be too challenging. But again, make sure you don't slip up on the finer details of your AM2 assessment, and be ready for that test. Yeah, so that's kind of the pre-assessment manual. In a nutshell, you download that from the Net website, so that's available on there. If we go right back to the very beginning again, and you can see all of these sections that we were speaking about, they're all in that pre-assessment manual, and you can spill these out here as well, where you can have a better look at them. If you find it easier to read through on the website itself rather than the pre-assessment manual, a lot of it is duplicated minus the common errors. So they've got their frequently asked questions section as well. If we have a little zoom over to that, my internet will speed up. There we go. And again, there's some common questions here where you can have answers to them. So, can I visit an assessment centre? The assessment centres are strictly controlled environments. Visits are not permitted unless pre-authorised by Net for an agreed specific purpose. So the answer to that is no. And again, you can read through all of these. I'm not going to go through them on here. So the news section, where you can read through some of the different things that Net are involved with and what's going on. You've got the information for candidates section, where you can go through some of the frequently asked questions, the video and resources, your readiness for the assessment checklist. It's all on there. And again, if you're an actual training provider or an employer, you can have information as well. The assessments themselves, you can link through to each individual section. And if you want to know about NET, you can meet their team, for example. So there's Carolyn Mason, who is the chief executive. And again, if you want to find out where their centres are, so you can find the NET centre, and there's lots of them located all over the country. So if you put in your area, so I'll put my postcode here at the office, for example, over in Driffield, and we'll have a little search and see if we can find an AM2 test centre. Okay, so I've put my location in there for the AM2 assessment centres. You can see it's brought 4 up on the map. We have got the Arena Training Centre, which is Peter Monsfort and his crew at Sheffield Meadowhall. There's one in Leeds. There's the Hull College Assessment Centre, which is the one my apprentices use. And also there's one in Halifax. And they all list there the types of assessment that they can complete. Also there's also Technique Learning Solutions, also in Sheffield. And again, it's all on the website for NET. If you want to find your local centre, if some are selling you that they're full, you have got options there, so you can go and have a look around at that. But let's shrink that down and open me back up again. So I hope you found that useful. I realise this is a long one. I did just want to run through some of the aspects to the AM2, and again I want to emphasise that point of use the NET resources. That's the best way to prepare for your AM2. Be aware of it from a very early stage in your apprenticeship as well. That's something I've said a lot. So even if you are just starting out and it's a 4-year process and this is the end point of that, to have awareness of what you need to be demonstrating during the course of your AM2 is a really powerful thing, because you can practice it along the way multiple times. So when you come to take it, it's really not that big a deal. They're not there to try and catch you out. They're not there to fail you for fun. They want to make sure that you are capable and competent to go off and work as an electrician. That's the aim. That's the really important thing that we need to preserve with the AM2 process. And again, there are videos across YouTube where you can go off and have a little look, where people will take you through step by step of what's involved. I don't want to do that here. My advice is to use the AM2 resources. If there is any specific knowledge you need around a certain aspect of that, go off and have a look on YouTube. There's some fantastic videos out there, certainly from Gary Hayes, GSH and eFix. And again, on their website at eFix, there's some fantastic stuff that you can go and dig into to really help you in all aspects of your apprenticeship, not just the AM2. But otherwise, I think I've waffled on and bored away for quite long enough. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. I will try and drop out some more videos like this here and there as well, alongside some of the testing. So if you want to see some live testing demonstrations, for example, I had a video not so long ago on that. If you want to see some processes of start to finish, I've done that as well on a video where you can look at how I would approach a start to finish process from dead to live tests that kind of tally in with what Guidance Note 3 expects and what AM2 might want to see. I'm not perfect, so don't use it as gospel. I'm trying my best to give you a bit of an insight as to what it might look like, and hopefully you find it useful. Get involved with the comments. If you have any questions, I'll try and help you if I can. Otherwise, have a brilliant day. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.